I decided to build a custom cave inside of my mountain on an SMP. I dug straight down from the top of my mountain, and after digging straight down, I created a pathway that would lead the top of the mountain to the already hollowed out area, which would be the cave. This pathway that was created would allow me to figure out where I needed to go. After I connected those two things, I needed to hollow out where the cave would be. Lucky enough, there was already a cave that was naturally generated that spawned inside my mountain, so I didn't have to mine as much as I would have. After hollowing out for a little bit, I decided to work on the floor. I started carving out a pathway that would be used for a river. The ocean would flow in to this river and cut the cave in half. I only created a basic shape for the river at first. I then started to hollow out the walls. I dug 9 blocks back to help me create a more open space for me to visualize how the cave would turn out. I hollowed out the right side of the cave while my friend hollowed out the left. This helped us double our productivity in half the amount of time. The hollowing out stage definitely took a good amount of time. We also went through multiple different pickaxes, probably 9 iron pickaxes each. We finished hollowing out the walls and I started to work on the floor again. I ended up getting rid of all the stone and adding dirt, because I didn't want the floor to be all stone. That'd just be too gray. Then I finished up the shape of the actual river, and I started adding different blocks for different textures. I wanted a smooth transition from the grassy banks onto the stone floor, so I didn't just cut off the grass and then make it stone. I tried to evenly spread it out so a nice smooth transition would occur. I had a little trouble with this bridge at first. I kept placing it on the wrong block. It was too low. I finally got it right, and this bridge will lead to the pathway that will lead outside of the cave. The bridge will go over a lake, a pond, whatever you want to call it, that is being filled by a waterfall and also by the river. I think it will look nice. So, yeah. I didn't like how the bridge looked right up against the wall, but I liked the placement of the bridge, so I decided to break a few more layers of the wall, make it a few more blocks deeper, wider, whatever you want to say, and that's what I did. I hollowed out a few more layers, pushed the walls back. I started to add more detail, more depth, more 3D formations. I made this first one right next to the bridge. I made another formation across from that first formation at the bridge. I started to add some more depth into the actual wall, and I started adding cobble and andesite to also add texture and variation besides just having gray stone. Once I thought I was done with the walls, I moved on to the roof. If you remember from before, I said I always start with the floor and then do the walls, and then the last thing I work on is the roof. So that's what I was doing. I was working on the roof. I started to mine it out and get a better idea and visualize the space that I could use. Try to see how it fits in with the already made walls and everything. I didn't want to make the roof flat because that wouldn't be realistic, so I indented it, had different layers, and used cobblestone and andesite as different textures. These next few seconds show exactly how I build. I break a few blocks, I step back, I look at what I had just done. I visualize what I can do to make it better, how it can be more realistic, and then I try to do that, and then I take a step back, and then I look at it like, does it need improvement? Do I need to do something else? If it does, I do it. If it doesn't, I move on to the next thing. I started working on the roof again, and then I realized this spot right here is a good spot for a spike, a stalactite. So I started making one. I got like the initial longest part, and then I started building around it, and then I built the roof to like have it fully shaped and well put together. This was like my first real attempt at making a stalactite hanging from the ceiling, so it took me a few tries to figure out what I liked and what looked real and what just pieced together perfectly. But eventually I got there, and I was able to implement this for other spikes. After I finished that spike, I decided to go work on the left side of the cave. I started hollowing out the area for the wall so I could start on the wall since I'd already finished the floor. I started working on another formation, but before I could finish it, I noticed that I didn't have enough walls surrounding it to support it and help me visualize where I wanted to take this formation. So I started working on that wall, and after I started working on the wall to support this formation, I finally got to visualize where I could take the formation, and I ended up connecting them, and then I was liking the way that it was going, so I started adding in textures with cobblestone and andesite, and then I just completed that wall. After many failed attempts at this wall, I finally got it complete by stepping back, taking a minute to look at what I've built, and visualizing where it can go and how I can change it to make it better. Since I finished that one wall, I decided to move to the wall that was right next to it, pretty much the main wall, and I wanted to do an indentation in it, so I started carving that out, and then I realized I haven't lowered the ground any, it's all just flat. So I decided to do that, as well as doing the indentation in the wall. I finally got onto the last wall of the whole cave, and this was probably the easiest wall because I already had everything surrounding it complete. I just had to attach it and connect it with the same style, the same textures, and everything just flowed perfectly. After I finished that final wall, I immediately moved on to the ceiling. I felt like I had my rhythm and my flow going, so I was like, this is the perfect time to do the ceiling, have it connect with the right ceiling, and just everything transition into each other perfectly. I wanted to get rid of this bottom layer of the ceiling because I felt like it was too low, but I couldn't get rid of all of it because I didn't want to have an immediate jump from a low ceiling to an extremely high ceiling. It just wouldn't flow well, wouldn't look real. You have to have a transition into it. So I left a little bit there so I can transition off of that. While I was working on the ceiling, I noticed that that final wall that I had been working on, or that I had just finished, actually wasn't finished. It needed a connector to the roof, not just that straight corner. It needed 4 I'm glad I decided to raise the ceiling because this allowed me to add more spikes hanging from the ceiling, which I think they look amazing. They give off a realistic kind of vibe. They're aesthetically pleasing. Once again, I started adding cobblestone and andesite in the ceiling for texture purposes. I did it a lot earlier than I usually do. I like to complete the build, or at least most of the build, before I added textures and different blocks, because I count that as the details, and I like to do the details at the very end. This was the last part of the roof. This is where it connected to the right side of the cave. This was probably the hardest part of the roof because I had to match the flow from the right and get everything connected perfectly without it not looking fake. Once I connected the left and the right ceiling to where they flowed perfectly, I decided to go more into detail, adding the cobblestone, the andesite for texture, and then I added some more stalactite spikes hanging from the ceiling. This last stalactite I had so much trouble with. For some reason, I could not get this correct. I tried different blocks, I tried a different shape, I tried a different support surrounding it, the ceiling connecting. I had no clue what the problem was, and then I took a step back and really just stared at it, and then it hit me. There's one block that is annoying the crap out of me. Part 2, the decoration and the more in-depth details will be coming